Welcome to another episode of Ship of War, my review of RoboCop. RoboCop is directed by Paul Verhoeven. I'm not exactly sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. It stars Peter Weller as Alex Murphy and RoboCop. Now, the premise of the story is about Alex Murphy, who is a cop that works in Detroit. And Detroit in this story is very dirty, very crime-filled. And something happens to him that he gets killed in a very gruesome way. And because of that, this company called OCP, who wanted to take Detroit and transform it into something beautiful that people want to live in and change it into Delta City is what they want to call it. They have this idea of wanting to clean up the crime in Detroit, and by doing that they feel like since the police department can't really handle all the crime, there's not enough people, too many police officers are dying, they want to put robots out into Detroit to clean up the crime. And they had a robot called Ed 209 who they wanted to put out there, who was a complete robot, nothing human about it. But the robot has a glitch to it, and 12 minutes into the movie you see what the glitch is. When you see the glitch is when you realize what type of movie this is going to be. And because of that, this company takes Alex Murphy's body because they want to have this perfect robot cop who is a robot, but at the same time he has the memory of an actual cop, so he can be the best of both worlds. And the great thing about this movie, that even though it's really gritty and it's very violent and there's a lot of nudity in it and there's a lot of cursing in it, it's still a good movie because it still has the human element in it when it comes to RoboCop discovering himself, because the way they did him is they basically erased all his memory. They took out all his limbs, wanted him to have the good things about the human part of him when it comes to a cop, but they didn't want him to have the human emotions. They don't want him to have the memory of his past life. They don't want none of that, because everybody thinks that Alex Murphy is completely dead when RoboCop comes to be. Nobody knows he's Alex Murphy. But as the story progresses, you see RoboCop fighting with himself and, you know, realizing that he had a past life before the life that he is now of a robot. And there's this one great scene where RoboCop is with his ex-partner, Officer Lewis, and they're having an exchange. He just removed his helmet. You see his face for the first time as RoboCop, and RoboCop's looking at his face, realizing he is Alex Murphy. And at that moment, he turns to Officer Lewis and he goes, "I can feel them, but I can't remember them," in reference to his wife and child that he once had. As this scene happens, it just progresses into more emotional things with RoboCop, and it's just great how they do it. This movie overall, even though it's been over 20 years since it was made, it still lives up to this day. You still can go back to it and relate to the stuff that's happening when it comes to big corporation, when it comes to crime, when it comes to just humans being bad or humans being good, or even technology. It still holds up to this day. The practical effects in this movie are pretty damn good. Like, they still hold up. The only questionable things was when it came to Ed 209. His effects were a little questionable because they're stop motion, and at points it does take you out of the movie and you kind of realize, yeah, this movie was made in 1987, but it's nothing to overall take you out of the movie. And this movie also has some great lines in it. Like, for example, my favorite line in the movie is, "I'll buy that for $1." Like, I love that whole commercial throughout the movie, because they show commercials throughout the film in reference to that time and how it's kind of futuristic and the technology that they have at that point. And it really adds to the film. Like, every act has this one commercial and then this one news broadcast, and it's very realistic with the way they did it, and it really, you know, makes the movie what it is. So if you've never seen RoboCop, I suggest you go and check it out, because it's a movie worth checking out from the 80s, and it holds up to this day. It really does. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. The Lego Movie stars Chris Pratt, Elizabeth Banks, Morgan Freeman, Liam Neeson, Will Arquette, Will Ferrell, has small cameos by Channing Tatum, Jonah Hill, and Charlie Day, and a bunch of other people who I'm not going to name because the list will be endless. Now, the premise of this movie is about this one Lego figure who is very generic called Emmett, and he's mistaken to be like the Grand Master Builder by Elizabeth Banks' character called